Greetings and welcome to the interpretation video for my fourth active imagination experience. I have the very transcript here. Obviously, from my previous videos, you'll know that I do handwrite these as they happen. I've noted the time, the date. Again, this was some time ago, which gives us the benefit of hindsight, of retrospect. But I have digitized these so that I can search them very easily. And let's go ahead and get started. And I'm hoping that by the end of this video, which I'm going to try to keep as brief as I can, or at least condense everything as just jam-packed as I can with information for the sake of your time. I hope that by the end of it, you understand through yet another demonstration that I'm trying to provide on YouTube, you understand the benefits of not only doing this, but the whole purpose behind writing them down and remembering them. The whole purpose that Jung had in encouraging his clients, his patients, to write these down so you can go back to them and study them and remember them later on. This is over a year ago. This experience took place. So I'm excited because I haven't rehearsed this, I haven't practiced this, and I'm just really excited to see what we kind of uncover. And you hopefully will see the benefits of doing that, as you see me have the benefits from going through my own experience here. The motive for this was just seeking my inner self. You know, who am I really? What am I going through? Whoever guidance. I didn't really have a very clear motive. I always start with the invitation to the subconscious, which is very simple, but I explained it in the active imagination technique video, which I will put up in the upper right for you. I find myself at my old high school in the bus stop. It's very surreal. It's almost dreamlike. There's a sense of like, yes, it's nostalgic, but it's not just, you know, some fond memory. You can tell like it felt otherworldly, an alternate world, alternate reality. And I'm very patient with this because it takes a while before the other, I guess, is how I say. It takes a while before a character, anybody, it takes a while before the subconscious manifests itself in the character. And I'm just kind of enjoying the scene. The other manifests as, honestly, a child. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess if you're really young, you might say 13 or 14, you know, wouldn't be a child. But as somebody who is older than that, who's pushing 30, 13 or 14 is definitely a child. He's shorter. He reminds me of me. In fact, he is me, and that's the whole message. That's the whole point. He is me. He feels fear, melancholy, naive optimism, and not to be too depressing, but you know, he's very introspective, introverted, quiet. All right, now getting down to the meat of the experience here. It's familiar. He's younger. We kind of go through introductions. We start by discussing the significance of this moment. Why am I here? And that's kind of what I'm asking of my own mind. Why this? Why is it using this image in particular? It was a time of innocence, closeness to God. Yes, I'm very spiritual. I'm a very religious person, I would say. I would rather use that language than to say I'm spiritual, which I find very nebulous, but at this point in time was kind of the turning point. The end of high school and the beginning of college was a turning point in my life. And it was full of possibilities. Not locked in. I mean, you could pursue any degree path and you're not really, I don't know. I guess you're not disillusioned by everything yet. Future ministry. You know, I did go to seminary. That's talked about here. I did go to college, obviously. And I was really trying to find what is the goal of this? What direction am I going? I ended up studying history, which then led to seminary. But I studied history because I enjoyed it. I felt that I was good at it. I excelled very well in that field. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. Now, why is this relevant? You know, I could continue describing this, but I'd rather tell you why is this relevant? Because at the time of this experience, I was at a job which I hated and which I did not enjoy, and which troubled me greatly because it was, I would just say, it was a sales type of job, which is, you know, thankfully we have hindsight to learn from, but I'm not made for that kind of job at all. In fact, I hated it tremendously with every fiber of my being. I found it. I'm not saying every sales job is like this, but where I was working, we were being coached to, on the one hand, value the client, love the client, do everything you can for the client, respect the client's time, everything. On the other hand, the other face, the other mask that they were wearing was manipulate the client, deceive the client, lie to the client, do whatever you need to get them to generate business, basically. And this was in complete disharmony with who I am, and also who I am aside from my personality, but also like spiritually, religiously, who I am. Trying to match up the young self and where I am now, I guess, is part of the purpose of this. I began to answer, but I'm cut off. And again, that's to tell you that active imagination is not, at least for me, and I feel like for Jung as well, it's not an experience where, if you just open your eyes, it's all going to go away, and it's almost like a daydream. If you're in a daydream and somebody calls out to you, or, your phone rings or whatever, you might never return to that daydream. You know what I mean? It's very, very fickle and very, very weak. But active imagination is not like this. I begin to answer, but my mind, my subconscious cuts me off. And without tiring you, because you can hear this entire transcript dramatized in the original video, but without tiring you through this, it's taking me through what are my motives? What am I doing in life? Is it money? Money's kind of vain. Money's fickle. And it's kind of proud and foolish, I think, to assume that you and you alone, your will is the only thing between you and whatever you want. It's just merely your choices in life. As though nothing else might affect your life outside of your control that may completely change the course that you wish to have for your life, which is why I spent so much time writing Tyranny of the Will, which unfortunately, I haven't published yet. It's very long. I think it's 80,000 words. And I do intend on putting an audio version out. It's as yet unpublished, but I had sought publication. It's probably going to end up being published on Amazon, like Tyranny of the Ego. But anyway, it's wrestling, I guess, also with that theme that I was just mentioning, the will, not just motive, but all this that's happening to me, all this that was happening to me with this job and my situation. Is it merely my will that's determining this? Is it merely that, or is it perhaps there is a greater purpose? There's a greater purpose, as you see with my cursor. There's a divine direction, a path I'm being taken down, and continuing, my worries about this in this experience, going on about my family. What about money? What about family? All this kind of thing. Also, going to the theme of the power of active imagination, I take a break and then returned a few hours later, and it just picks up. And Jung talks about this because this happened, numerous times in his own experience. I think I may mention this in one of my videos about, Jung on active imagination, where I delve into his own work. Obviously, the Red Book, when he wrote that, that's a very lengthy book, and he spent time illustrating it, and it was like a handwritten manuscript in medieval style, but obviously that wasn't done all at once. And it's the same with active imagination. You're able to leave if you need to, and come back. And I found it always to be reliable, that the mind picks up where it left off. What do I long for? I take time to reflect. And answer. I'm not afraid the experience is going to end, and I'm really speaking to those who are watching this who may be new to this. You feel like maybe you have to rush, or maybe, just like any other daydream, it's just going to fade away. And you know what? That may be true more than it is for me. That may be true for others, but I've found that this experience, in some way, there is something to it. There is some. It's so meaningful to the mind. It's so. I don't know. It's so powerful. There's something to this within the mind, and it's almost just like your subconscious is just so glad to finally receive expression and interaction that it clings to this experience. What do I long for? To be at peace, to live pleasingly and in harmony. That's the meaning of peace, in other words, to live pleasingly and in harmony with myself, the world, God, and my loved ones. To be a benefit to myself and others. Not just to, live pleasingly and in harmony with, but also to bless, to be benefit, to be able to give, thus be faithful to God and please and honor Him. This ties back to the first act of imagination with the idea of Eden. That's what it ties back to. Peace and harmony with yourself, others, and God. And really in reverse order, I guess, would be in terms of priority. And would you do this through the company you work for? This is the only edit. People ask if I edit this. People seem to have the impression, and I understand why, that maybe I make this all up, that I'm like crafting some kind of a story, and I'm not. That those do exist on YouTube. I've seen just what's out there in the realm of active imagination. And yes, some videos allegedly, if you watch it, it's like a guided meditation, and it's meant to induce or directly provide and feed into your mind this experience. But what you are seeing is my experience, and it's not yours. And I hope that you have your own. But what you're seeing is something that really did happen, and this is the transcript of it. The only reason I redacted this is for legal reasons. Really, I just don't want any legal, no defamation suits or anything like this. Would you be able to do this through the company that I work for at the time? I knew the answer was no. I mean, financially, yes. But as for, the sacrifice for that financial gain would be sacrificing harmony with myself and ultimately also the good of my clients, who would be, swindled to some degree or another. Maybe not all would be, but certainly some would be. And my employer would have looked favorably upon that. Why? It would be the same if I sold cars or produce. You can always say, well, at least I gave them, you could be the nastiest, greediest, this most deceptive used car salesman, to use a stereotypical profession. And you can justify that deceit and that greed by saying, well, at least I'm giving them a car, they might not be able to get to work without this car, even though I made a bunch of money off them, and, they should have paid, 40% less or whatever. Oh, at least they have a car, right? But you would have only taken, you would have not given them anything. There is a place for that kind of salesy work, of course. I know that, but it's not for me, is the point. And if you have somebody in your life that you trust and that you spend time talking with, you understand the benefit of this kind of conversation. You understand the benefit of having somebody, if it's good to talk to a good friend about these things and to sort that out, and that really helps you. How much more would it be beneficial to talk to the side of yourself that experiences and feels and exists and is very real, but in some way it's still separate from you? The subconscious is what I'm referring to. How much more benefit would it be to deal directly with yourself? Your drive for knowledge lends itself to other things. And so here we're getting into the idea of talents. As you're reading along, you're seeing this is not a gifting all have. So that's the question. What is your talent? Referring to the parable of talents. I believe Luke 19 is the parallel version of that in Luke. What is my talent? Now, I think this has changed, at least my perception of it in some way. I mean, deep passion, deep zeal, obsession with truth. That certainly is my talent, I feel. But, as time has gone on, and I've worked, I have found other work, thankfully. That's been a very long and arduous process. But I think that there is other skills, administrative skills, we might say. Analytical thinking, I think, would be another one. But understanding that, what are you good at? What have you been given? What skills, what have you been gifted with? What are you passionate about? This is a very meaningful thing. And it's just amazing how time changes things, doesn't it? Isn't it? It's amazing how time changes things. And thankfully, yes, this has passed with time, thankfully. These are my marginal notes. As it's going on, I'm making these marginal notes. This is the key point. Your talents must not be neglected. And I have to say, what's the long-lasting significance of this in my life? The long-lasting significance of this particular act of imagination is this has stuck with me. I mean, I've found myself talking about this to my wife. We're talking about this idea of what are your talents, how can we make use of them, how can we not waste them, how can we steward them and nurture them so that they're bearing fruit and growing, and I'm doing what I was created to do. That's come up so spontaneously, and I just have to wonder, I mean, obviously I was aware of this question here, this point here, this forceful point during this act of imagination, but I mean, it just seems to, now that I've had this experience, it wasn't like this before, but now since this time, since July of 2022, since this time, I mean, this is the question of my life, even at my current job, especially when we think about now that we do have an income, and we have more than we need, thankfully. What can I do with the extra to make that fruitful and to put that to use and to nurture it and grow it almost like a garden? How can we invest, or what can we build with this that would make use of that? And that question of what is my talents, what can we do? It's almost as though, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'd be like 80% confident in telling you that because of this act of imagination, it's like this question or this point is now on the front of my mind more often, much more often. And I become aware of something. And it's because uniting the conscious and unconscious and realizing that this question was really at the root of this conflict, this inner turmoil and inner conflict in my life at my old job. Realizing that it's almost like, it's like there's a dam and it's holding back this water and we're waiting to flow downstream. And having this experience, it's like the dam has burst, and now we finally, all this water rushes forward, moving further downstream where it belongs. It's almost like that's been the purpose of this experience. Whatever your life is on this earth, it must involve using those talents. And again, this has proved true, time and again as well. And of course, he goes on. Again, the idea of Eden, which comes from the first act of imagination. Again, right here. Referring to another act of imagination, which I've already put out. That's my first one. Eden is used as the symbol for life and peace, being at peace, being in right relationship with being with yourself, but also, the earth where you live. And I don't mean the earth in some kind of naturalistic way. I just mean, you're gardening, you're taking care of what's around you, you're taking care of where you live, you're not destroying it, you're not polluting it. There's a harmony there in how you're living with the earth. Flourishing, finding work, life that wouldn't drive me to the brink of destruction. And this Eden, it's expounding. These active imaginations aren't just here and there little pieces, little isolated ideas. That it's like, you have your next act of imagination will probably involve themes or ideas that you have experienced in previous active imaginations. It's expounding the idea of Eden. It's not just right relationship, but this right relationship is not necessarily tied to your physical possessions. It's not prerequisite to have those right relations that you have certain physical possessions. It's not tied to physical possessions. And so it's expounding and developing my subconsciouses to me via active imagination, the idea of Eden or the concept of Eden, which is a recurring theme in my experience. And, I do wonder. I do wonder if everybody has, very similar themes, but I feel like they don't. I feel like, everyone is so different that we probably have uh, a very diverse range of like these themes, these meta themes. Yeah, I don't even know if that's a word, but these ideas that are not just simple frivolous little ideas. I mean, the idea of Eden is a very deep and rich subject. But I just wonder, does everyone kind of have the same idea in their active imagination about, how am I going to live in right relationship with everything? Or I just wonder, and if you have, I'd love to hear from you all. And I've been hearing in the comments about, people finally discovering this, people who have heard about this kind of thing. They didn't really have a word for it or understand where it came from or what it's about or how to do it. Didn't realize Jung's connection with it and the fact that Jung really revived or really introduced it or reintroduced it into the modern thinking. I just wonder what your themes are, and any of you who have made the leap between just finding this to be a curious, interesting little thing to actually not just trying it once or twice, but you finally have found a way that you've made this work for you. It's finally flowing and coming naturally. I'd love to know in the comments, in all sincerity, what themes you're experiencing. For me, it's Eden. It's my relationship to God, to man, to myself, to the land around me, to everybody, my family. Living faith must be lived. Squandering your life for physical gain. In other words, wasting your talents. Not using your talents. My gift is not sales. So if I were to go to do that just to try to get rich and just to make the money that I could have made at this previous place, doing it for physical gain is useless. In part, that's because Eden does not require a certain standard of living or a certain, certain bank account level or something like this. It doesn't require this. It's useless. You can attain the physical gain, but why is it vain? Why is it useless? Why is it a waste? Because that does not give you this. That's why. You can do better than that. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's amazing because you kind of expect your subconscious to be, sometimes it just takes you by the shirt collar and it just says, here, let's just lay it all down on the line. That's happened before. And I'm really excited because, you think this is the pattern of the subconscious, just a sermon just flowing out, this lecture, whatever you want to call it, just flowing out. I mean, this was unprecedented at the time because this is the first time where my mouth is shut for most of this time, and when it's asking me things, it's asking me very meaningful things that I just have to sit here contemplating it, like right here, and reflecting, and then answering. It's not just answering things that are just trivial and trite little things. And then it's responding in these paragraph-long answers. And it's responding in a meaningful way, not a twisted way, if you know what I'm saying. It's not responding in a twisting of what I believe back to me, but it's actually responding in a meaningful, consistent way with who I am and what I consciously know and think about. This is a question. I think that this was mentioned because well, obviously you could say, well, I got older. Yes, that's one answer. But there was a experience in college. I remember where, we were all sitting in one of like the cafeteria areas at this very massive public university where I went to college, and we were passing around baby pictures, and one of the people at the table just looked at me and said, "Oh, that's you were so cute. Why do you stop smiling so much?" That kind of thing. And so that's always been a question to me. It's all in the sense of, okay, let's go up and, right here, where did this come from? It came from somewhere between my childhood and now, and in college it was like that as well. What's driving that, you know? Like, what's producing that? If that is your greatest joy, you know, another, you know, that's the answer there. If that's your greatest joy, then it's just calling me to reflect, you know, upon my motives. I mean, would this would this be consistent? Would this, which I know is true, be consistent with my corporate job right here? You know, of course, financially, but everything else would be in ruins and smoldering ruins. And so I hope this little discussion, this little time of my own reflection has been useful to you in showing you what you can do, going back over your manuscript, reflecting on these things. And like I said, you know, with this at the very end, it's calling forth very powerful memories. And at the time, you know, this memory was like a decade old at the time of this active imagination. But it has access to that, and it pulls from your entire, all of your memory banks, the entire wealth of your own experience. And you know, this is just one experience. This is just one active imagination. And hopefully you see now, you know, especially with time in the rearview mirror, with all this time between this and now, hopefully you see what there is to be gleaned from not just the experience itself, but the interpretation, which is, I believe Jung says, it's as important as the experience itself is the interpretation of the experience. So I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your feedback. You know, I haven't been as active as I wish. In part, that's been because of my employment, but I look through what has taken place since I last published. And the feedback, you know, like the active imagination technique has 1,000 likes, 100% like ratio, and that just like blew my mind. 20,000 views. I mean, that's just, I never, I mean, I thought it was useful. I poured my heart into it and trying to make the guide, but you know, I thank you for your review. I thank you for watching and supporting this channel, and I hope to see you back on a more recent video, or a newer video than I have been putting out, on a video that's not quite as delayed as I've let this one be. So thank you, and I hope you have a great day.